Hey everyone, we really want to encourage you to visit the refinery in Charleston, South Carolina. The refinery is a beautiful mixed-use facility that's home to upscale office space, 2 restaurants, the Limbo Lounge, and an amphitheater that hosts national, regional, and local acts year-round. We cannot recommend it enough. Go to therefinerychs.com to get event and venue information. You can also go to the site to learn how you can even book the spaces you want for your own event.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Shrimp City Report, the Low Country's #1 podcast about entertainment, leisure, living, and making things.
Yes.
At least it is this week.
Yep.
I'm Devin. I'm joined with DJ today, and we're talking to a native of Charleston, and we're always thrilled to get actual natives in Charleston.
Yeah.
So who do we have today, DJ?
Yeah, we have train advocate and blacksmith Zach Liollio here, one of my friends from high school.
Right on.
Yeah, I was doing some research on Instagram, realized that he has one of the coolest Instagrams in the world. So I decided to go ahead and, contact him because honestly, I wanted to hear more about your current career.
Oh, yeah. Happy to be here.
Yeah.
You know, the blacksmithing thing sounds kind of like it would be on the nose for Charleston or somewhere around here. But like you said, the Instagram thing is, that's usually not, I guess, influencers that we're used to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So y'all went to school together, right?
Yeah, we both went to Charleston School of the Arts, got a visual arts background. But I mean, some people might know the Liollio name from, architecture, correct? Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. But growing up in a family of architects, especially, we were exposed to not only the visual side of things, but like the construction science side of things from a young age, and definitely the trades and everything as well.
Yeah. Do you still incorporate visual arts in your blacksmithing and all that stuff too as well?
Oh yeah, I'd say design is a huge part of it because it's easy to make whatever already exists on the market. A lot of stuff ends up kind of looking the same, but to actually pioneer a certain aesthetic, it takes a lot of time and energy, and I'd even say just a certain eye for it.
Does it also take a bit of industrial engineering eye as well too?
There is,
looking for weak points and stuff like that type of thing.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing. What I do is a lot of production work. So I'll make 10 units of something or 100 units of something, and we call it manufacturability, which is a mouthful, but it's basically our ability to make something within a certain time limit. With traditional blacksmithing, especially ornamental ironwork, it might take you several weeks or even months to work on a piece, and no problem. It's going to be a big installation. But with a smaller tool or something else like that, you really have to be able to do it in a concise period of time and still be able to turn a profit. So there's a little bit of, I'd say there's definitely a lot of engineering involved with that sort of thing.
So after high school, where'd you go to college, or did you go down a different avenue?
I did. I actually went to College of Charleston, and I studied historic preservation.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So it was, I'd say HP is kind of an architecture adjacent degree, because some of the students I went to school with also went on to get their master's in architecture. But one thing I found out by doing that is I was actually more into the trade side of things than I was into the design.
Right, yeah.
Sort of the quote unquote office side of things.
Oh, okay.
And I took that a step further, and at that time I was actually already working for a blacksmith at Middleton Place. And we, it made a lot of sense to pursue more of a hands-on career than a typical architectural type career.
And you were always a bit of a history buff, even in high school. I remember you were always drawing, again, a lot of ironwork and focus on trains and older music and not an old soul, if that sounds fair.
That's definitely a good assessment, because that's one thing I'd say. My love of history definitely inspired me to look at antiques and old hardware and old tools and things like that, and eventually later on the desire to figure out how they were made and how they were put together came naturally with that.
When you were going through that, did you ask your dad, or did you just start asking people? By the way, there's trains. We're live at the refinery as our great sponsor, and speaking of industry of the United States, there's one going by right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you started getting into that, and you're like, first, that looks cool. Then, wow, I wonder how they made those. And then, how quick was it to how can I make those?
I'd say that came fairly quickly.
Uh-huh.
A lot of it, it's amazing how much labor went into even something like an old padlock that was, handmade.
Yeah.
And I like to tell people in the 18th century, material was expensive. Bar iron was expensive, but labor was cheap. And in the 20th century, that flipped a bit. We have to charge for our labor. We can get steel pretty readily now. Well, it actually depends on, even today, like the material itself can also be very expensive. So it drives up the cost of everything. But that's the thing, it's just figuring out how to do it expeditiously and how to do it well. It's a careful balancing act.
So that makes for I guess back in the day, there were pricey padlocks.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, it's amazing because we had to import everything, especially in the 18th century, came from England. And over time, the United States really built itself up into a metalworking superpower. And in fact, there was an entire, huge industry in Philadelphia for producing ornamental ironwork.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, the guy named Sam Yellen, and that stuff was all over the country at some point. That's actually Philip Simmons became as prominent as he did because at the time he started producing ornamental ironwork, none of that industry was left in the United States. This is in the 1930s. Most of the old blacksmith shops had already shut down.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I guess we got spoiled growing up in Charleston because you can't swing a dead cat without hitting some nice ironwork around here.
Yeah.
So I didn't know it had kind of died on the vine.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's amazing. After the horse and buggy and wagon kind of went away and automobiles came onto the scene, a lot of the first automotive mechanics were blacksmiths. And they just kind of switched gears a bit.
Okay, yeah.
And so Philip was actually in a precarious spot in the 1930s. And when he took over his employer's shop, because a lot of that work was already drying up, he's like, well, what am I going to do? And like you mentioned, in Charleston, there's so much ornamental ironwork. Well, somebody has to be able to repair it and, maintain it and, of course, replace sometimes whatever gets damaged. And he just had such an eye for detail for that sort of thing.
So getting back after college, what was your first, or I guess during college, what was your first venture into the blacksmith trade?
Well, during that time, I worked, I'd say part-time, especially weekends. I worked at Middleton Place. And they have an 18th century shop out there. And that was my first exposure to like actual hands-on ironworking. Well, I say that, but I also took a class right before I started. It was a Maymester course at American College of the Building Arts. And that was a primer into how traditional ironwork was done. And I fell in love with it. I just love the level of detail that you find on older pieces and, the techniques used. It's unlike anything we see today.
Yeah.
So you did the Maymester. When you went to Middleton, I haven't seen their shop. Is it like foundry? Is it smelting? Is it hammering? What would we expect to see at something like that?
Well, they have, I think even today, they still have the craft village out there. So it's, I say the craft village, it's the old stable yards.
Yeah.
And they have like a woodworker and a cooper who actually makes barrels. And the blacksmith shop is built out of an old tack room where they used to keep horse tack, like saddles and stuff. And they converted that to the blacksmith shop probably, I guess, in the 70s maybe. So it's a small shop, but in there you'll find like, traditional vise and anvil. And you can, speaking from experience, you can comfortably fit two blacksmiths in there one time.
Okay.
Otherwise you kind of run into each other and like,
oh man, that must be hot in our Charleston summers.
I was going to ask, was that like all like cold forge, or what type of forge did you have then?
It was coal. At that time, Santee Cooper actually still had a coal power plant on Lake, I think it was Lake Moultrie. And we would go up there and get a truckload of coal from them. And it was the worst coal possible you could use. Apparently
very dirty.
Yeah, it's very dirty. There's different grades of coal.
Yeah.
And steam coal, this is called, is a very much lower grade, than metallurgical coal.
Mm-hmm.
So it would smoke and it would just completely smoke us out of the shop.
Mm-hmm.
But we would go out there because it was basically free to us.
Yeah.
And we'd load up on that. But the shop, it's not really, since it wasn't a purpose-built blacksmith shop, it can be kind of difficult to use.
Okay.
Around here, definitely, especially back in the day, they would have had mostly open-air shops where the sides were open and, you might have like a vent or a roof monitor to help ventilate some of the smoke.
Yeah.
So basically, working in that shop is kind of like working inside of a smoker. So
Yeah, it sounds like it.
yeah.
So you worked at Middleton for a good bit. I imagine you grew. Now you actually have your own studio, ZPL. Okay, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. Where's that located at?
That's actually part of our house in West Ashley. We lucked out when we got our house. The guy that owned it, I guess 2 owners before us, ran an auto shop out of there.
Oh, really?
In the 50s. Yeah. Yeah, it was like a full service mechanic.
Outlaw auto shop.
I mean, yeah, basically.
Right on.
It's crazy. And, he left, or I don't know if he left it intentionally, but like the old workbench was still in there and some of the old tools were still in there. It was crazy that it was almost like a time capsule. But so I brought in my metalworking stuff and it was just kind of a good fit.
Okay.
I've been collecting this stuff for 15 years now.
Yeah.
Anytime somebody had a broken tool or a tool that was damaged, I would take it either for free or
so
lower
you do
cost.
your own maintenance as well on all your tools.
That's the thing. Yeah.
Is that almost like is that like a given for most like historical blacksmith or like any like blacksmith in general nowadays?
For the most part, yeah. They historically they called the blacksmiths the kings of the trades because they could make tools not only for themselves but for woodworkers and masons and whatnot. But I would say kind of the litmus test for a skilled blacksmith is if they can make their own tools. And usually tongs and hammers are kind of like basics. Now we're lucky today in that you can go to an antique store and find tools for relatively cheap, or you can even find them on eBay. But there are times where you still have to make your own stuff or repair your own stuff. It just comes with the territory.
I mean, speaking of tools, we have to talk about your multi-tool. Like, is it I don't know if I'd call it a series because I know you've got like the crow beak and the miller and the Thayer. Is that how you pronounce
That's
it?
correct.
Yeah.
And we'll have pictures of all those on the web.
Yeah.
With us.
Yes. The crow beak's awesome. Yeah. Like, was that a series that just kind of like sparked your interest? Like, what made you want to go into like the multi-tool like series?
Well, it was by request. Somebody sent me a photo of the Thayer's tool. And I think it was either from TikTok or Instagram. Somebody posted a reel of an original. And the originals of those cost sometimes up to $400, $500
Really?
on eBay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they're like, well, do you think you could make a modern copy of this that, if somebody uses it and they break it, they're not going to feel bad about breaking it, and I was like, yeah, I could probably make something like that. So I started making the Thayers, and this is late November of, I think, 2025, and it took off. Like, I got tons of orders, especially through Etsy and eBay, and even a few wholesale orders as well for people that did like cast iron collecting or reselling. Or
yeah.
So the Thayer tool, was that something that was historically significant, or like when we have first seen those?
Well, the patent was originally filed in 1881.
Okay, so that's a while back.
Yeah. That's the thing, patents usually they have a life of around, I think it's 20 years or so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, after 20 years it becomes public in that you don't have to, it's no longer protected by the patent. Anybody can produce it. And this tool, at least the Thayer's tool, from what I can tell, was manufactured in the late 19th century. I'm not sure when they stopped.
Yep.
But the guy, William Henry Thayer, was kind of an interesting dude. He moved around a lot, eventually lived in South Carolina and Columbia. So there is a South Carolina connection to it.
So can you name every use, I guess, or every part of the tool like that?
And we have all day.
Yeah.
Yeah. The biggest ones.
Obviously, there's like bottle opener and
Yeah, opening bottles is one. The prongs, the 4 prongs on one side are supposed to be for tenderizing meat.
Okay.
And actually, it does work. I've used it in the kitchen many times. Also for you can use it to lift pots and pans. You can use it to lift pot lids. And it's interesting because in 1881, the bottle caps that we know today, the crown type bottle caps, didn't exist. So it's kind of almost like a strange coincidence that just it works for that purpose.
Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah.
It is like, looking at, I mean, that's a time capsule, really. There's so many. I see that, it's got something to dig musket balls out with.
Yeah.
Although they were using ball and cap then, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's fascinating to have that kind of tool. And I'll tell you, most dudes having it on their desk at work or on their coffee table, someone's going to ask about these things.
I mean, aside from it, being so useful, I assume even back then it was one of the hot items to have. But the design's crazy. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's just by happenstance or if that was the original intent, but it is very unique. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. I did trace some of the history of not only this tool, but similar tools. And it was a big deal in the late 19th century to have these kitchen multi-tools because everybody was switching over from traditional cooking on a brick hearth, in the fireplace, to now having cast iron stoves. And these tools are originally designed to be able to work with the stoves. The stoves have these cast iron round, they call them stove eyes, but they're just plates.
The lids, right?
The lids,
on top, yeah.
So that was originally one of the uses besides picking up
makes sense.
pots and pans. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
You could pick up the lids, the stove eyes, and move them around. And it's just something, it's amazing how even old technology like that, it comes back even with each generation because, they didn't have toaster ovens back then, but I use this thing with my toaster oven more than anything else to pick up pans and stuff.
I was wondering about that, if kind of postmodernism, if certain things will come back that look exactly the same, but for the other purpose, a la the toaster oven.
Exactly.
So you've got the multi-tool series, but you also do some other stuff. I've seen you do stuff going back to cookware. I've seen you make cast iron, a bunch of cast iron cookware and other stuff like that as well, right?
One thing that's really been selling well, which I did not expect, was these copper coffee scoops that I started making. Because originally, they say necessity is the mother of invention. And we have these refillable K-cups in our kitchen, for our Keurig coffee maker.
Right.
And I was having a heck of a time filling them. I'd always spill coffee grounds everywhere. I was like, well, if I made a scoop that was the exact size of the opening of the K-cup, it'd be a lot easier. So that's what I did. I made one out of copper because, copper is malleable. It's not super hard to work. And I was like, well, it looks pretty cool. Maybe they'll sell online. And at this point, I've probably made hundreds of these things, if not close to 1,000 or more.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I mean, in different sizes now too, because that's one thing when you start metalworking professionally, people will come to you with, I see you make XYZ, but can you make ABC or can you customize it? And sometimes those customizations turn into new products as well.
Okay, that's a good point. Yeah.
I could see those scoops being something that I would see at a nice battery Christmas Eve party and then an ice dish or something.
It's funny you should mention that because today I'd sent off an order for this restaurant group in Miami. They want to use them in their restaurants.
Hey, really? That's awesome.
So that would be, and they're, from what I can tell, it's some fairly high-end restaurants in downtown Miami, but they want to use them they call them a amuse-bouche, which is basically an appetizer type, very small, bite-sized appetizer.
Right.
But they want to use those spoons for serving those, essentially.
Oh, that's awesome. Just for a little tasting or something.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Cool. Yeah. So there's also, I was just doing research, looking through your Instagram and your profile and everything. There's also a South Carolina Artist Blacksmith Guild, right?
Yeah.
And you actually been there, right? For one of the meetups?
Oh, yeah. In fact, I encourage anybody to join. Even if you're not actively metalworking, you just have an interest in it, definitely check it out because we meet all over the state. I've been bad about going to the meetings outside of Charleston, but we do meet in Charleston in April. But it's a good way to network with people and also find equipment. I've bought different pieces of equipment from guild meetups, and we have a newsletter we send out every month, and I highly recommend it. It's been definitely helpful.
Is it always at a historic site? And do you judge the site before? This is nice, but last year we went to Fort Sumter, that type of thing.
I mean, it's funny. Most of the time, it's at people's shops. People
Oh,
volunteer.
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah,
If they have a big enough shop where they can host, 15, 20 people at a time, they'll volunteer.
Is it a lot of I guess talking shop too? Like how do y'all even get to the nitty gritty of how your forges are built and everything?
Yeah, I'd say so. It's a lot of, usually with each meeting, we'll have a demonstrator, somebody to actually, showcase something.
Mm-hmm.
So usually with the Charleston meeting, they'll have somebody from the American College of the Building Arts come out and show how to make perhaps a certain type of latch or a piece of hardware or something like that. But it varies. I'd say as far as talking shop, if you have an idea that you want to float about how to do something differently, this would be a good place to come out and kind of talk to people about that.
Is the blacksmithing community in Charleston, is that pretty tight as well, or at least open for communication and stuff?
Yeah, I'd say there's a few of us here and a couple of us that actually do it professionally, but I'd say it's definitely a very supportive and open community. And having the American College of the Building Arts here has definitely kind of fostered that a bit.
How long has that been here?
Since, I should know this since I teach there part-time.
Good segue.
I think in the 80s or 90s, perhaps, is when they started kind of offering classes.
That sounds about right, yeah.
Philip Simmons was a big supporter early on with developing the ironworking program there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually what the guild is named after, the Philip Simmons Artist Blacksmith Guild, South Carolina.
Again, kind of back, do you think it was because of the necessity of work that's required in Charleston?
It's a pyramid scam.
Yeah,
yeah, that's the thing.
You were mentioning earlier, you yourself worked on the gates for, which museum was it?
Oh, the African American Museum.
Yeah, African American, which is brilliant. That's awesome.
I appreciate it. Yeah, that's one thing. Charleston has built sort of this aesthetic that has become very marketable. So even new buildings in Charleston and Daniel Island will have, certain aspects of historic Charleston homes, especially the ironwork.
Yeah.
It's attractive to people. And yeah, it's kind of, somebody has to make it and then somebody has to maintain it down the road. But I mean, there's gates and features downtown that have been there since the 18th century.
Mm-hmm.
Are your suppliers local as far as ironwork or whatever type of material you work with then as well?
I use a mix. One of my big tool suppliers is actually in Kansas City, and it's a good relationship because I wholesale my products to them.
Oh, cool.
And then they sell me tools. But HJE, Harry J. Epstein Company, is an old hardware store in Kansas City, Missouri. They've been around since the 30s, I think, and they have a really cool operation. They're more than just hardware. They also have an artistic mind as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're a blacksmith. I'm asking basic questions real quick.
Okay.
You said you've already mentioned copper. We've heard cast iron. Is that right?
Yep.
Are there any other?
Yeah, I guess what are your multi-tools made out of?
What is your quiver of art?
Well, the mini tool that I brought here today is stainless steel, and stainless, especially since I do a lot of utensils, it's good to be able to offer a stainless steel option. Because a lot of commercial kitchens, that's kind of the standard. They want stainless utensils, stainless whatever.
Right.
But copper, sometimes brass, not as much. And I've made some stuff out of titanium before.
Oh, really?
Like bookmarks, believe it or not.
Was this again with the coal forge or?
The bookmarks are actually laser cut, and then I machined them.
Oh, okay.
Cool. They're super thin. They're like 30 thousandths thick material.
Yeah, man, that's pretty
thin.
trippy.
But yeah, even within steel, there's different alloys.
Yeah.
Mild steel is definitely the most common. It's a very soft, pliable steel, but there's different grades of tool steel. The flint strikers I make are typically 1090 steel, which is a very high carbon. It produces a lot of sparks when you strike it. And if you try that with any other type of steel, hitting a piece of flint against it, it just won't spark.
Yeah.
So you have to be very selective. Yeah.
So you mentioned bronze. Do you do your own alloys? Do you have tin there? Do you have copper? Or is that something that's just the return on the effort is not worth it sometimes?
Well, I used to have a gas furnace for doing metal casting.
Oh, okay.
Which is where you actually pour it into a mold.
Yeah.
I didn't do it commercially. I just kind of had it for if I wanted to make something kind of special, play around with stuff. And you can definitely, if you wanted to make your own alloys of different materials, you can. It's not something I'd would do on a commercial scale.
That does bring up a good point. You mentioned Blacksmith, maintaining tools and kind of having to, work on your own, around the house, having stuff prepared as well. At what point do you get in that mindset of, hey, this worked for me, let me put it on the marketplace?
Oh yeah, that's a big part of product development, because I use my kitchen basically as a lab for testing that stuff. And there's usually social media is a good gauge of that.
Yeah.
So I'll make some short form videos of me using the tool, kind of showcasing it. And then if it generates enough spark on social media, that to me is like an indicator, like, okay, well, maybe I should offer it like a limited production run, see if it sells. I tell you, the biggest piece of advice that I could give to somebody wanting to get into the trades like that is to partner with other influencers that have, a much larger following. That's one thing that was make or break for me when I first started, was I found people that were willing to show off my products and test them. And, they'd have hundreds of thousands of followers, even in some cases over 1 million. And I'd send them like a free sample and be like, hey, this is what it is and what it does and all that. And that was a pretty powerful driver of sales typically. And I can't, underscore enough like how important that is, especially in this day and age. I think social media is definitely the catalyst for a lot of businesses today.
Yeah, and that's inspiring.
As a person who struggles to post one video a day on Instagram, I totally feel that.
It's tough, because that's what they recommend, is to grow your following, post at least once a day. I don't even post once a day.
No, I try to, but it's tough, man. It's a full-time job. Yeah,
that's true.
It really is, hard. And the cool thing is, you've taken a traditional effort and married it with contemporary means of distribution, and you're making it work.
Yeah.
And we're pretty stoked and frankly proud of it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah.
So as far as connections, if anyone wants to look at your current supplies, where should they go?
Well, you can go to zplandco.com. I'm also on Instagram at zplandco, or Facebook as well. And usually most of my newer products I'll post on to Facebook and Instagram first.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, cool. Well, we encourage all of our listeners to go check you out and see one of DJ's old friends from high school and many schools, and from West Ashley.
Yeah.
We love to evangelize Charleston and West Ashley. So
there you go.
Absolutely.
Anyway, for the Shrimp City Report, we're going to wrap it on up today. We appreciate everybody coming by, and mostly appreciate you coming by, Zach.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, of course. Enjoyed it immensely.
Yeah.
Right on. Everybody have a good week, and God bless. Thanks.